Farmer left his safe open to test his black gardener. Her reaction changed him. Deborah Williams stopped in front of the wide-open safe and felt her legs tremble. There was more money there than she had ever seen in her entire life. Stacks and stacks of bills scattered, as if someone had run off and forgotten to close it. It was when she saw all that money that tears began streaming down her face. They weren't tears of greed or desire, but something much deeper that hit her like a punch to the gut. Deborah knelt right there in front of the safe and began crying in a way she hadn't cried in years. "My God, my boy," she murmured, pulling a yellowed, worn photo from her apron pocket. "If only you could see this, Michael." She held the photo to her chest, rocking back and forth, lost in her painful memories. The money remained there, untouched, as she sank into a sadness that seemed endless. From the hallway, hidden behind the slightly ajar office door, Richard Thompson watched the entire scene with a heavy heart. For 15 years, Deborah had worked on his farm in rural Pennsylvania, tending to the gardens with a dedication he'd never seen in any other employee. Yet, a childhood distrust always made him question whether she was truly trustworthy. The test he'd set up that Tuesday morning was supposed to be simple: leave the safe open, with money in plain sight, and see if she'd resist temptation. Richard expected to catch her trying to take a few bills, finally confirming his prejudices were right. But Deborah's reaction caught him completely off guard. "Why is she crying?" he asked himself, feeling a tightness in his chest he couldn't explain. Deborah remained kneeling, clutching the photo as if it were the most precious thing in the world. Her calloused hands trembled as she murmured words Richard couldn't quite make out. "20 years, my son. 20 years since you disappeared trying to save money for medical school. And here I am, seeing all this money, remembering how you worked day and night." Deborah's words struck Richard like knives. He knew she had a son, but had never asked about his employee's personal life. Now, watching this woman break down in front of a fortune that could solve all her problems, but only brought pain, he felt like the worst person in the world. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, take a moment to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It helps us a lot as we're just starting out. Now, continuing, Deborah finally stood up, wiped her tears with her sleeve, and carefully closed the safe. She didn't touch a single penny. Richard quickly stepped away from the door, pretending he'd just arrived as she walked out of the office. "Good morning, Mr. Richard," she said, her voice still shaky. "Good morning, Deborah. Everything all right?" "Yes, sir. I just came to get the tools I forgot in the office yesterday." Richard noticed her lie. There were no tools in the office. Deborah had gone in for another reason, but he chose not to confront her. His heart was still racing from what he'd witnessed. In the days that followed, Richard couldn't stop thinking about what he'd seen. Deborah kept working as usual, but he noticed she avoided his gaze and arrived earlier than usual. It was as if she were trying to make up for something, even though she'd done nothing wrong. "Deborah's acting strange," he commented to his wife, Margaret, over dinner. "Strange how?" "I can't explain it. It's like she's avoiding me." Margaret sighed and set her fork down on the plate. She was a 62-year-old woman, her graying hair always tied up in a bun, and she had endless patience with her husband, even when he said things that bothered her. "Richard, have you ever stopped to think that maybe you did something that made her uncomfortable?" "Me? I didn't do anything." "Are you sure?" Richard brushed it off, but his wife's question kept nagging at him. The next day, he decided to observe Deborah more closely to understand what was going on. That's when he discovered something that left him even more confused. During lunch break, instead of resting like the other workers, Deborah would leave the farm and go to the neighboring community, a small poor neighborhood called Hope Village. Curious, Richard decided to follow her discreetly. What he saw left him speechless. Deborah was sitting under a tree, surrounded by about 10 children of various ages. She held a few branches and leaves in her hand and was teaching the kids about plants and gardening. "Look here, this little leaf," she said, showing a small sprout. "It looks fragile, but if you take good care of it, it'll grow into a big, strong tree." One of the children, a boy who looked about 12, approached hesitantly, feeling his way. Richard realized the boy was blind. Deborah gently took his hand and placed it on the leaf. "Feel here, Timmy. What's the texture like?" "It's soft, Aunt Deborah, and it smells nice." "That's right. Every plant has a different scent. Over time, you'll be able to tell them apart just by touch and smell." Richard watched the scene for nearly an hour. Deborah had endless patience with the children, answering all their questions, helping each one plant their own little sprouts in makeshift pots. When it was time to go back to work, she handed out some fruit she had brought from home. "Aunt Deborah, will you come back tomorrow?" a little girl asked. "Of course, sweetheart. I come here every day." "Every day?" Richard thought to himself. So that's why she arrived early for work. She was making up for the time she spent with the children. Back at the farm, Richard couldn't stop thinking about what he'd seen. Deborah was using her own break time to teach underprivileged kids without getting anything in return. And he, who had always doubted her, had never bothered to truly understand who she was. That night, Margaret noticed her husband was quieter than usual. Did something happen today? I found out why Deborah was acting strange. And? Richard told her everything he had seen in Hope Village. Margaret listened silently, but he could see in her eyes an expression he knew well. The same look she gave him when he said something prejudiced. "Richard, there's something you might not know about Deborah." "What is it?" "For years she's come to me every time guests at the farm left something behind in their rooms." Richard's farm also operated as a rural inn, hosting tourists and student groups who came to experience country life. It was common for visitors to forget personal belongings. "What do you mean she comes to you?" "She always turns in everything she finds. Jewelry, money, medicine, documents, everything. And you know what impresses me the most?" "What?" "She makes sure to write everything down in a little notebook. Date, time, where she found it, description of the item. She's more organized than we are." Richard's stomach twisted. All these years doubting Deborah, and there she was, being the most honest person he knew. "Where's this notebook?" "She always carries it in her bag, but I have some notes she's given me over the years. Want to see?" Margaret went to the bedroom and returned with a folder full of papers. Richard opened it and began to read. There were hundreds of notes detailing every item returned by Deborah: gold rings, expensive watches, wallets with money, cell phones. If you added it all up, it would be a fortune. My God, Margaret. And here I was, thinking she wasn't trustworthy. "Richard, you need to stop with these prejudices. Deborah is one of the most upright people I know." That night, Richard barely slept. Guilt was eating him up inside. The next day, he decided he needed to talk to Deborah and apologize, even if she didn't know about the safe test. But when he arrived at the garden where she worked, he found a scene that worried him. Deborah was standing in front of the rose seedlings, one hand leaning on the fence, looking dizzy. "Deborah, are you okay?" "I'm fine, Mr. Richard, just a little tired." But he could see it wasn't just fatigue. Her face was pale, and she seemed to be forcing herself to breathe normally. "You don't look well. Should I call someone?" "No need, sir, it'll pass." Deborah went back to work, but Richard kept watching. All morning she stopped several times, always with a hand on her chest, taking deep breaths. It was obvious something was wrong. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, take a moment to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It helps us a lot as we're just starting out. Now, continuing. At lunchtime, instead of going to Hope Village as she always did, Deborah sat under a tree on the farm itself. Richard approached her. "Deborah, aren't you visiting the children today?" She looked at him, surprised. How did he know about the children? How do you know about that? Richard felt embarrassed but decided to be honest. "I saw you there yesterday. I'm sorry for following you, but I was worried because you've been acting differently." Deborah lowered her head, ashamed. "I'm sorry, Mr. Richard. I know I shouldn't leave the farm during work hours, but I make up for it by coming in early. You can deduct it from my pay if you want." "No, Deborah. You misunderstood. I'm not angry. In fact, I was impressed by what I saw. Why do you do it?" She stayed silent for a moment, as if deciding whether to tell him or not. "Those children, they remind me of my son when he was little. He loved plants too, always followed me around the garden asking 1,000 questions. When I teach them, it's like he's right there with me. Your son, he disappeared 20 years ago, Mr. Richard. He was 17 at the time. He was saving up for medical school, worked mornings at a garage, studied in the afternoons, did odd jobs at night. One day he left for work and never came back. Richard felt a lump in his throat. It was the same story he'd heard when she was crying in front of the safe. Did you ever look for him? I searched everywhere. Police, hospitals, shelters. Nothing. It's like he vanished from the world. And his father? Died when Michael was 10. A work accident. After that, it was just the two of us. Deborah wiped away a stray tear. That's why I love teaching the children so much. Especially Timmy, that blind boy you saw yesterday. He has an incredible knack for learning about plants. Just by touching and smelling, he can identify almost anything. Really? Yes. He has a natural talent. He's even taught me a few things I didn't know. Richard grew curious about this special boy. The next day, he decided to go to Hope Village to see Deborah's work up close. When he got there, he found a scene even more touching than the first time. Timmy, the blind boy, was explaining to the other children how to tell if a plant was sick. You have to pay attention to the texture of the leaves, he said, running his fingers gently over a seedling. When a plant is sick, the leaves get wilted or rough, and the smell changes too. Deborah was standing beside him, smiling proudly. Very good, Timmy. You're becoming quite the expert. It's Aunt Deborah who teaches well, the boy replied with a smile. Richard approached and Deborah was surprised to see him. Mr. Richard, what are you doing here? I came to learn more about this project of yours, may I? Of course! Richard spent the whole afternoon observing. The boy, Timmy, truly had an extraordinary talent. He could identify plant diseases, knew exactly how much water each species needed, and was even teaching the other children with remarkable patience. How did you learn all this, Timmy? Richard asked. Aunt Deborah taught me. But I also figured out some things on my own, like I came up with a special way of planting that works better for people who can't see. How so? I use different-sized pots for each type of plant, and I also mix the soil with sand of different textures, so I can tell which plant is which just by touching. Richard was impressed. That boy had developed his own cultivation technique adapted for the visually impaired. It was something innovative, something that could help many people. Timmy, have you ever thought about sharing this technique with others? What do you mean, sir? There are many blind people who'd love to learn how to grow plants. Your technique could help them. The boy was excited by the idea, but Deborah intervened. Mr. Richard, these children are poor. Who would care what they have to teach? You'd be surprised, Deborah. The following week, Richard made some calls to acquaintances in agriculture. He told them about the technique Timmy had developed and managed to schedule a visit from some experts to the farm. When the technicians arrived, they were amazed by the boy's method. One of them, a professor from an agricultural university, said he'd never seen anything like it. This is revolutionary, the professor remarked. We're working on inclusive farming projects, and this technique would be perfect. Would you like to document it? Richard asked. Absolutely. And we'd also like to meet whoever taught this boy. That's how Deborah found herself at the center of attention among several agriculture experts. They wanted to know everything about her teaching methods, how she'd managed to develop such sensitivity in the boy. Mrs. Deborah, the professor said, do you have any formal training in agriculture? No, sir, I learned by doing, working with plants since I was little. Remarkable. You've taught techniques that even some of our college students haven't mastered. The experts spent a whole week studying Timmy's method and observing Deborah's classes. In the end, they made an offer that left everyone stunned. We'd like to purchase the rights to this technique, the professor said. It's something that could revolutionize inclusive farming. We're willing to pay $500,000. Deborah nearly fainted when she heard the amount. Timmy, standing beside her, looked confused. Aunt Deborah, what does buy the rights mean? It means they want to pay so they can teach your technique to others, sweetheart. But I didn't come up with it alone. You taught me everything. The money should be yours. No, Timmy. The idea was yours. The money is yours. Then let's split it half and half. The two kept arguing over who deserved the money until Richard stepped in. Why don't you decide that later? First, let's hear the full proposal. The professor explained that besides paying for the rights to the technique, the university wanted Deborah and Timmy to be consultants for the Inclusive Agriculture Project. It would be well-paid work, allowing them to travel across the country, teaching others. This is wonderful, said Richard. Deborah, you deserve this opportunity. But to everyone's surprise, Deborah refused. I'm very grateful for the offer, but I can't accept it. Why? They all asked at once. First, because knowledge should be shared for free. If this technique can help people, it shouldn't have a price. Second, because I can't leave my work here at the farm. Mr. Richard trusts me, and I won't abandon him. Richard felt his heart tighten. After all those years of doubting her, Deborah still considered him someone she couldn't turn her back on. Deborah, you can't refuse an opportunity like this because of me. It's not just because of you, Mr. Richard. It's because I love what I do here, and the children of Hope Village need me. Then why don't we do something different? The professor suggested. Instead of buying the rights, how about you give free lectures? We'll cover all travel expenses and even provide a stipend. What about Timmy? He'd be the main speaker. After all, he's the one who developed the technique. Deborah looked at the boy, who was beaming at the idea. What do you think, Timmy? I think we can help a lot of people, Aunt Deborah, and if it's free, even better. And so they agreed. Deborah and Timmy would start giving lectures on inclusive agriculture without charging for the rights to the technique. Anyone could use their methods for free. In the following months, Deborah began traveling through rural Pennsylvania and neighboring states, always accompanied by Timmy. The lectures were a success, and many blind people started taking an interest in farming. But all this exposure brought an unexpected consequence. One of the lectures was filmed and posted online by an attendee. The video went viral, shared thousands of times. That's how Michael Henry Williams, a renowned doctor from New York, saw the video. When he heard the speaker's last name and saw her face, his heart raced. It can't be, he murmured, watching the video again. Michael had been adopted as a child by a wealthy New York family. His adoptive parents had changed his name from Michael Williams to Michael Henry Blackwood, and he'd grown up never knowing much about his origins. But he remembered his birth mother. He remembered her face, her gentle voice, how she cared for the plants in the small yard of their simple home. And the woman in the video looked exactly like his memories. Deborah Williams, he repeated the name. Mom? Michael spent the whole night researching Deborah online. He found other lectures, some articles about her work with underprivileged children, and even photos of the farm where she worked. The next day, he cancelled all his appointments and drove to Pennsylvania. He didn't know exactly what he'd say or how he'd introduce himself. He'd thought about searching for his birth mother for years, but never had the courage. When he arrived at the farm, he asked the first worker he saw for Deborah. "Miss Deborah is in the back garden, sir." Michael walked there with his heart in his throat. From a distance, he saw a woman kneeling among the flowers, wearing a green scarf on her head and a work apron. It was exactly as he remembered. "Excuse me," he said, approaching. Deborah looked up, and when she saw his face, she froze. It was like seeing a ghost. "Michael," she whispered, hardly believing it. "Is it really you, Mom?" Deborah couldn't answer. She began to cry uncontrollably, covering her face with her hands. Michael knelt beside her and hugged her. "I'm sorry, Mom. I'm sorry it took me so long to find you." "My son, my boy," she sobbed without stopping. 20 years I searched for you. 20 years thinking I had lost you forever." "I searched too, Mom. But my adoptive parents changed my name, and I couldn't quite remember where we used to live. Are you okay? Did you get to study? Did you achieve your dream of becoming a doctor?" "I did, Mom. I'm a cardiologist. I have a practice in New York." Deborah hugged him even tighter. "I always knew you'd make it. You were so smart, so dedicated." "Mom, why did you never look for me in New York?" "I did, son, but under the name you had as a child. And after so many years without finding anything, I thought you didn't want to be found." "Never, Mom. Not a day went by that I didn't think of you." They stayed embraced for a long time, crying and talking. Michael told her about his life, his adoptive family, his medical career. Deborah shared the years of searching, her work on the farm, the children of Hope Village. "Mom, I want to make up for all the lost time. Let me take care of you now." "You don't have to, my son. I'm fine here." "But you're working so hard, tending to the garden." "I love what I do, Michael, and I have responsibilities here." At that moment, Richard appeared in the garden. He had heard unfamiliar voices and came to see what was happening. "Deborah, is everything all right?" "Mr. Richard, I'd like you to meet my son. Michael, this is Mr. Richard, the owner of the farm." Richard was stunned. Deborah's son, the one who had disappeared 20 years ago, was standing there, alive and successful. "It's a pleasure, Michael. Your mother always spoke of you with such pride." "Thank you, Mr. Richard. From what I've seen, you've taken good care of my mother all these years." Richard felt uneasy. If Michael knew how much he had doubted Deborah all this time. "Your son became a doctor, Deborah, just like you dreamed." "Yes, Mr. Richard. God answered my prayers." Michael stayed at the farm for 3 days, learning about his mother's work, talking to the children of Hope Village, understanding the life she had built there. "Mom, I want you to come live with me in New York. I have a big house. You can have any garden you want. I already told you, son, my place is here." "But why? You don't owe these people anything." "I do. Mr. Richard gave me work when I needed it most. The children in the village depend on me, and Timmy still has so much to learn." Michael couldn't understand his mother's reluctance. To him, it was obvious she should leave everything behind and live a more comfortable life in New York. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, don't forget to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It helps us a lot as we're just starting out. Now, continuing. It was then that Richard decided to tell Michael the truth about the safe test. He called the young man for a private conversation. "Michael, I need to tell you something about your mother." "What is it?" "A few months ago, I did something terrible. I left the office safe open, with money in plain sight, to test if she was honest." Michael was outraged. "You did what?" "I know it was wrong, but I had my prejudices, my suspicions. I wanted to be sure." "And what happened?" "Your mother walked into the office, saw all that money, and instead of taking any, she started crying. Crying over you, over how hard you worked to save money for school." Michael's eyes welled up. "She didn't touch the money. Not a single cent. And since then, I've learned so much about her. Her honesty, her dedication, her generosity. Your mother is the most upright person I know." "Why are you telling me this?" "Because I want you to know your mother isn't here out of dependency or lack of options. She stays because that's who she is. She's loyal, she's grateful, and she doesn't abandon people who need her." Michael fell silent, processing what he'd just heard. "Mr. Richard, can I ask you something?" "Of course." "Why did you distrust my mother?" Richard lowered his head, ashamed. "Prejudice, Michael. Pure prejudice, and I regret it every day. And now I know your mother is one of the most special people I've ever met, and I'm lucky to have her working here." That night, Michael had a long talk with his mother. "Mum, Mr. Richard told me about the safe test." Deborah was surprised. "What test?" "He left the safe open to see if you'd take the money." "Oh, that day. I didn't even know it was a test." "You knew the safe was open?" "I did. But when I saw all that money, all I could think about was you, how hard you worked to save every penny, and that's why you cried." "I cried because I saw all your effort wasted in that money, all your dreams lost when you disappeared." Michael hugged his mother tightly. "Mom, I understand now why you don't want to leave here. You've built a family here, haven't you?" "That's right, son. Mr. Richard and Mrs. Margaret are like siblings to me. The kids in the village are like grandchildren, and Timmy, he's special." "Then I'll visit you often, and whenever you need anything, just call me." "Thank you, my son. But there's one thing I need." "What is it?" "Forgive me for not protecting you, for letting you disappear." "Stop, Mom, none of this is your fault. I was the reckless one back then. I left without telling you where I was going, thinking I could handle things on my own." "What happened that day, son?" Michael took a deep breath. "I'd gotten a temporary job in a nearby town. It was only for a week and the pay was good. But I didn't tell you because I wanted to surprise you. When I got there, the guy who hired me wasn't trustworthy. He disappeared with my ID and my money. I was lost, with no way back. My God, son. A family found me on the street, took me in and cared for me. But when they tried to bring me back, you'd already moved. No one knew where to find you. I moved because I couldn't afford the rent anymore. I went to live in a cheap boarding house. And I ended up being adopted by that family who took me to New York. They were good people, gave me an education, love, but I never stopped thinking about you. Why didn't you come back after you grew up? I did, Mom, several times, but our old house was gone, the neighbors had moved, and I didn't know your full name to search for you. You really tried? For years, until I graduated from medical school, and I decided that if I couldn't find you, at least I'd fulfill the dream we had together. Mother and son talked late into the night, filling the 20-year gap with stories, memories, and plans for the future. In the following days, Michael joined Deborah in her activities. He was struck by the affection she received from everyone at the farm and in Hope Village. It was clear she'd become a beloved figure in the community, but Michael noticed that sometimes his mother would pause, put a hand to her chest and take a deep breath. It was always quick. She tried to hide it, but his doctor's eye didn't miss it. Mom, have you been feeling anything unusual lately? Unusual how? Fatigue, shortness of breath, chest pain. Oh, that's normal at my age, son. Sometimes my heart races a little, but it passes. Mom, this isn't normal. You need to get some tests done. I don't need to, Michael. I'm fine. Yes, you are getting those tests. I'm a doctor, and I can tell something's wrong. After much insistence, Michael finally convinced his mother to go to New York for a full round of tests at the hospital where he worked. The results were worse than he'd imagined. Deborah had a serious heart condition that required urgent surgery. Doctor, she said when Michael explained the diagnosis, how much will this surgery cost? Mom, don't worry about that. I'll cover everything. No, son, I can't accept that. Why not? Because you've already given me the greatest gift of my life, finding me. I can't ask for anything more. Mom, you're being stubborn. This surgery could save your life. And what if it doesn't? What if I don't make it off the operating table? I'd rather leave this world with dignity on my own terms. Michael was desperate. He couldn't believe he'd found his mother after 20 years, only to lose her again because of her stubbornness. Mom, for God's sake, let me help you. Son, I've already lived much longer than I ever expected. I watched you grow up, graduate, become a doctor. Now I can go in peace. Don't say that. You still have so much life ahead of you. The argument went on for days. Deborah flatly refused to accept her son's financial help for the surgery. Michael couldn't understand her resistance. That's when Richard found out about the situation. He called Michael. Michael, your mother told me about the surgery. Mr. Thompson, can you help convince her? She won't accept my help. I have a better idea. What if the farm covers the surgery? What do you mean? Your mother has worked here for 15 years. She's entitled to health insurance, paid leave, a whole list of benefits I never provided. Let me make up for it by paying for her surgery. You'd really do that? Michael, your mother is more than an employee to me. She's family, and family takes care of each other. When Richard made the offer to Deborah, she resisted at first too. Mr. Thompson, you don't owe me this. Yes, I do, Deborah. You've worked all these years without ever asking for anything in return. Let me do this for you. But it's so much money. Deborah, remember the safe test? I do. That day I saw all the money you didn't take. It was less than half what this surgery costs. If you'd taken that money back then, you could pay for your own surgery now. But I couldn't take what wasn't mine. Exactly. And that's why I can now give what is mine to you. After much discussion, Deborah finally agreed to let Richard pay for the surgery. Michael took charge of performing the operation and overseeing her treatment. The surgery was a success. Deborah spent 2 weeks recovering in New York at her son's house. 2 weeks filled with warmth, making up for lost time. Mom, now that you're better, are you sure you don't want to come live with me? Michael, I've already explained, my place is at the farm. But here you'd have more comfort and I could take better care of your health. Son, comfort isn't just about a nice house. It's about being where you feel useful, where people need you. Michael was starting to understand his mother's nature. For her, happiness came from helping others, not from being helped. When Deborah returned to the farm, she was welcomed like a hero. The children of Hope Village threw a surprise party with signs and flowers. Timmy, the blind boy, had prepared a special presentation. "Aunt Deborah," he said, "while you were away, I developed a new technique. Want to see?" "Of course, sweetheart." Timmy showed how he'd created a plant identification system using different textures in small pots and soil. It was even more sophisticated than his previous method. "Timmy, this is amazing. You're becoming a real expert. It's just that I had a lot of time to think while you were away. And I also talked to some people who came here looking for you." "What people?" "Some university professors. They said they want to invite us to give lectures in other countries." Deborah was surprised. The impact of their work had reached an international level. "And what did you say?" "That I'll only go if you come with me. We're a team, right, Auntie?" Deborah smiled and hugged the boy. It was incredible how that child had such great emotional maturity. In the following months, Deborah and Timmy received several invitations for national and international lectures. They only accepted the ones that allowed them to freely share all the techniques they had developed. The response was so overwhelming that a television network wanted to make a documentary about their work. Deborah hesitated at first, but Timmy convinced her. "Aunt Deborah, if it airs on TV, more people will learn about our technique. More blind people will be able to plant." "You're right, Timmy." The documentary aired on a Friday night and had a surprising audience. On Saturday morning, the farm's phone wouldn't stop ringing. People from all over the United States wanted to learn the techniques. Universities offered partnerships, and organizations wanted to fund projects. But the call that moved Deborah the most was from an 80-year-old woman from Minnesota. "Miss Deborah, my name is Eleanor. I lost my sight 5 years ago in an accident. Since then, I stopped tending to my plants, which were my passion. Last night, I saw your documentary and cried all night." "Why, Miss Eleanor?" "Because you gave me hope back. Today I'm going to start trying to plant using the boys' technique." "Where do you live?" "On a farm here in the countryside. My children think I can't do anything on my own anymore." "Miss Eleanor, you'll manage just fine. And if you need help, call me, and I'll explain everything clearly." There were hundreds of calls like that. Blind people from all over the country felt inspired to start cultivating plants again. Richard watched all of this with a mix of pride and admiration. The woman he had doubted for years was now inspiring thousands. "Deborah," he said one day, "do you realize the impact you're making?" "It's a big responsibility, Richard." "And do you plan to keep traveling to give lectures?" "Only as long as people need me. But my priority is still the children here in the village." "Why don't you expand the project? Create a bigger school with more resources?" "I'm not sure that's a good idea. Sometimes when things grow too big, they lose their essence." Richard had been thinking about a proposal for weeks. He finally decided to bring it up. "Deborah, what if we turned part of the farm into an inclusive gardening school?" "How do you mean?" "A free school to teach blind people and those with other disabilities how to work with agriculture. You'd be the educational director. Timmy would be an instructor, and we'd bring in other specialists." Deborah fell silent, considering the proposal. "Would it really be free?" "Completely free. In fact, we'd even offer scholarships to students in need." "And where would the money for all this come from?" "Leave that part to me. I have some investments I can use for it." "Richard, why do you want to do this?" Richard took a deep breath. "Deborah, I'll be honest with you. For many years, I had prejudices. I doubted you, questioned your character, thought terrible things about you." "I know that, Richard." "You do?" "I could tell by the way you looked at me, by the questions you asked. But I understood. A lot of people have those prejudices. It's part of life. But that doesn't justify it, Deborah. And now I want to make it up to you. I want to do something that honors the wonderful person you are. You don't owe me anything. You gave me work when I needed it, treated me with respect, paid for my surgery. Deborah, let me do this, please." After much thought, Deborah accepted the proposal. But with one condition. She wanted Michael to also be part of the project, offering free medical consultations for the school's students. "Mom, I'll do it. "But I can't come every week. My clinic in New York." "You don't have to come every week, son. Once a month would already help so much." Then it's settled. The school project quickly took shape. Richard sold some land he owned in other towns to fund the construction. In 6 months, the Deborah Williams Inclusive Gardening School was ready. "Why did you name it after me?" Deborah asked when she saw the sign at the entrance. "Because you're the heart of this project," Richard replied. The school's opening was an emotional event. People came from several states, local officials, university representatives, and especially many blind individuals eager to learn. Timmy, now 15, gave a speech that moved everyone. "When I was little and lost my sight in an accident, I thought my life was over. But Aunt Deborah taught me that we can see with our hands, our nose, our heart. Today, I want to teach others that having a disability doesn't mean having limitations." The first class consisted of 20 blind students of various ages. The oldest was Mrs. Eleanor, the woman from Minnesota who had called after the documentary. "Miss Deborah," she said on the first day of class, "you can't imagine what this means to me. At 80 years old, to have hope again. Mrs. Eleanor, you'll be amazed at what you can do." The classes mixed theory and practice. Deborah taught about different types of plants, cultivation techniques, and how to identify pests and diseases. Timmy shared the adaptive methods he'd developed, and Michael came once a month to discuss the therapeutic benefits of gardening. Soon, the students were producing impressively high-quality vegetables and flowers. Many began selling their products at local markets, earning an income. "Aunt Deborah," Timmy said one day, "we've created something really special here." "It's true, my dear, I'm so proud of you. And I'm proud of you. You changed my life, and now you're changing so many others. We're changing them together, Timmy. This is teamwork." The school quickly gained national recognition. The Department of Education listed it among the country's most innovative educational programs. Several other cities wanted to replicate the model. But for Deborah, the greatest recognition came from her students. Like Mrs. Eleanor, who started a small garden at home and regained her independence, or Robert, a 25-year-old who'd lost his sight young and now ran his own landscaping business. "Teacher Deborah," Robert said at the first graduation ceremony, "you gave me back my dignity. Now I support my family with my work." "Robert, you always had dignity. I just helped you see it." The graduation was emotional. The 20 students presented their final projects, gardens adapted for the visually impaired, community gardens, innovative growing techniques. Michael was there, seeing the pride on his mother's face. "Mum, you fulfilled a dream you didn't even know you had." "It's true, son. Life surprises us sometimes. And now, what's next?" "To keep doing what I've always done. Take care of plants and people." After the graduation, there was a party at the farm. Richard gave an emotional speech. 2 years ago, I did something I'm still ashamed of today. I tested Deborah's honesty by leaving a safe open. I wanted to catch her doing something wrong to justify my prejudices. The crowd fell silent. But what I saw that day changed me. I saw a woman of integrity crying in front of a fortune, not out of greed, but out of pain. The pain of remembering her missing son who worked so hard to achieve his dreams. Since then, I've learned Deborah is more than an exemplary employee. She's an extraordinary human being who transforms the lives of everyone around her. And today, seeing all she's built here, I'm certain the true test of character doesn't reveal people's dishonesty. It reveals the greatness of the human soul. Deborah was crying when Richard finished his speech. Not from sadness, but from deep, overwhelming emotion. "Mr. Richard," she said, "thank you for giving me the chance to show who I really am. Thank you, Deborah, for teaching me to be a better person." In that moment, looking around at all those smiling faces, her son Michael, the boy Timmy who'd become like a grandson, the students from the school who'd found new hope, Richard who'd transformed from a distrustful boss to a loyal friend, Deborah felt her life had been worth it. All the hardships, all the pain, all the years of loneliness searching for her son, everything had led to this moment of fulfillment. "Aunt Deborah," Timmy said, stepping closer, Can I ask you something? Of course, sweetheart. Were you ever mad at Mr. Richard for doubting you? Deborah smiled and glanced at Richard, who was chatting with some guests. You know, Timmy, I've learned anger only hurts us. Mr. Richard was raised in a different time with different ideas. What matters is he changed, and today he's one of the people I love most in this world. Do you forgive everyone like that? Forgiving isn't about the other person, sweetheart. It's about us. When we forgive, we free ourselves from the weight of resentment. How did you learn that? From life, Timmy. From a lot of pain, but also a lot of love. As the party continued, Deborah stepped away to admire the garden she'd tended for so many years. The flowers were more beautiful than ever, as if they knew this was a special day. Michael walked up to his mother. Mom, what are you thinking about? I'm thinking about how God works in mysterious ways, son. How so? If you hadn't disappeared that day, maybe I'd never have come to work here. If I hadn't come here, I'd never have met the children from the village. If I hadn't met them, I'd never have known Timmy. If I hadn't known Timmy, we'd never have developed the inclusive gardening techniques. And if you hadn't developed those techniques, you'd never have seen me in that video online. We'd never have found each other again. Michael hugged his mother tightly. So all that pain was for something. All that pain was, it taught us love always finds a way, son. Always. End of story. What a touching story, isn't it? Now tell us, what did you think of Richard's transformation? Have you ever been in a situation where your prejudices were challenged? Leave a comment sharing your experience and don't forget to hit that like button. Subscribe to the channel so you don't miss other heartwarming stories like this one.